Hello, in this video I'm going to be doing a Nissan Frontier transmission drain and fill. Now this can be applied to any of the models that have the VQ40DE engine in it with the automatic transmission. Now you may be wondering why I'm this low to the ground and you're looking at the front of my Nissan Frontier without the grille. In this video I'm going to be doing a couple other things. I'm going to be measuring the capacity size of the front cooler for the transmission fluid, the radiator itself, and then also the transmission as a whole. Now, the other part that I'm going to be discussing is an issue that Nissan has had with these radiators where internally they come apart or they split and they allow the coolant and the transmission fluid to mix inside the radiator. There's a non-technical term, it's called SMOD, strawberry milkshake of death. If you do check your radiator fluid and it looks like a strawberry milkshake, then you have the contamination in your radiator. And I'll be discussing that a little bit here as well. But first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to start with draining this front cooler, and then we'll move on to the radiator and then the transmission itself. So why don't we get started, and I'm going to do this first step. But one thing to mention before we go forward is that this is not the conventional way to do the drain and fill. The drain and fill is you just remove the plug and drain the fluid and put the same amount of fluid back in it. There are other processes that you can do that I won't go into in this video, but they're a little bit more complex. This engine only has 47,000 miles on it, so I'm just going to do the drain and fill. I am now down under the truck, and I'm going to be removing the transmission fluid from the radiator. There are two lines, one that comes from the transmission into the radiator, and then this one goes out to the external cooler. And so I'm going to be pinching this one off so that I do not get any of the fluid coming back into the radiator from the transmission. And then I'm going to be draining it from this position here. Then we'll measure the amount. And so I've completed the removal of the transmission fluid from the front cooler and the radiator. And the results actually surprised me a bit. Here is the quantity that came out of the front cooler, and it's really not even 1 US cup. And then this is what came out of the radiator. Man, it's not even half that. So I've kind of concluded that this is just residual oil that is traveling back to the transmission pan. I'm not really surprised about this for the front cooler because the front cooler actually sits higher than the transmission pan. I was expecting there to be maybe a quart sitting in the radiator, but the results state differently. And so for those that are bypassing their radiator and just using this front cooler because, you know, they have a 2005 to 2010 Frontier or Xterra, that doesn't seem to appear to be a bad option. You're not really losing any capacity in oil in this case. The only thing that I'll state is that if you're in a colder climate, you don't get that heat transfer from the engine coolant to the transmission oil. It's going to take longer for the torque converter to lock up because your fluid is not getting up to temp as quickly as possible. So with that said, I'm just going to move on to finish up my drain and fill of the transmission fluid, and we're going to get under the truck and just removing the bolt, but I'll show you that here. The transmission bolt is 19 millimeter. And there. We'll wait 10-15 minutes, let that drain out. So I went ahead and I removed all the fluid out of the components. As you can see, I still have that cup of fluid there. I've drained the transmission pan, and it's not all in here. In a second, I'll show you where the rest of it's at. I wanted to just point out that the bolt itself has a cross washer on it, so make sure you replace that or have one available when you do the transmission fluid change. Now, in my other video, I did do a review on this oil extractor. I did pull out with the extractor almost 3 quarts there. I'm going to put the oil in the pan into the oil extractor. That will measure it up, and then I'll go ahead and add that same amount of oil back into the transmission. Now that I've removed most of the old oil and put it in this container, it adds up to about 3.5 quarts. That means that there's approximately 6.5 quarts still left in the torque converter. What I've chosen to do is to purchase some extra bottles of this Matic S, and along with my oil extractor, I'll be able to remove that oil from the top part of the engine instead of getting underneath. Now, on the dipstick, you have a hot mark and a cold mark, and I'm going to use those marks to make sure that I add enough oil back into the transmission. Now, with that said, that's the end of this video. If you feel that the information in this video is very helpful to you, go ahead and give us a like. Better yet, subscribe and you'll get the latest notifications when new videos come out. If you have questions, comments, please leave them in the section below. And I appreciate you watching, and you have a great day. Thank you.